I want to just, before we conclude, I want to get into the home and living work you have done. And if you can elaborate on the research side of it, and then the group home versus the cell settings and variety of settings, and what are the key insights came out of the research, and what's the next steps on that?
So I've actually spent a long time the last few months looking at the Royal Commission report, and the argument in the Royal Commission report is based on a rights theory, which says that group homes are a flawed model. That you can't have a good life in a group home because there's 5 people together, and that housing support for people who need 24-hour support should be delivered in more individualised options, alternative inclusive housing options, as they refer to in the Royal Commission report. There's another interpretation of the problems of group homes, and that's about poor implementation. That it's not necessarily the model, it's not the bricks and mortar, it's the support that happened. And the problem is that there's been a shortage of resources, so people have had to live together who weren't well suited. Now we can fix that, and that we've got staff that are untrained and staff that are treating people not as individuals but as part of a group. If we had good practice and we had good practice leadership and good organisations, we could fix a lot of the implementation issues in group homes. And we know that from the empirical research that says, here are some really good group homes, this is what they look like, this is how you create those conditions. So I would argue that it's not the model of 5 people living together, or 2 people or 3 people living together, it's the quality of the practice that's the problem. Now the issue is that the NDIS, the Royal Commission says close group homes, but improve practice in the interim. Now that's fine, but the danger is that's demonising group homes, and it's going to neglect the people that are in those group homes. And it's really clear that the people with intellectual disabilities who have spent their life living in an institution and then in a group home are still there. They haven't benefited at all from the NDIS. And that's what the NDIS review says. It says this group of people haven't been given choices, so we need to expand the options for them. We need to help them think about whether they want to live in alternative types of accommodation. That's fine, but the NDIS review also talks about having a ratio of 1 to 3, like 1 support worker to 3 people, and people living in more individualised settings. That's really problematic for people with severe and profound intellectual disabilities. If they're living in an individual unit by themselves next to 2 other people, and there's 1 staff member, that means they're spending maybe a third of their time with no staff member there. People with profound intellectual disability can't engage themselves. That means they're being disengaged for a long period of time. Whereas we know if you've got 5 to 2 workers, then workers can support more than 1 person at a time to be engaged. So there's no evidence that says 3 people is better than 5 people. And there's all sorts of ramifications about making those assumptions about small size. The other issue is that many of the group homes were built, particularly in Victoria, at a time when the institutions were closed. They were purpose-built, they're large houses, they've got large gardens. I'd much rather live in one of those where I have my own room, my own ensuite, and a garden than live in a pokey 2-bedroom house with 1 other person, or a 1-bedroom apartment on my own in a block of flats where I never saw anybody going by that wasn't on the street. So there's lots of assumptions made in the report that I think need to be unpacked. But at the end of the day, I think it's well-intentioned. It's saying people should have alternatives, but I would say it's a leap in the dark about what those alternatives are, because most of the evidence about the alternatives come from people with acquired brain injury, people with acquired disability, and they're the people that have come into the scheme, and they're the people for whom the new innovative models have been developed. We haven't developed new innovative models for people with intellectual disabilities who live in group homes. And we haven't developed new innovative models for the people that don't have strong families. We see those people with strong families, we hear from those families about what works for them, but we don't hear from the people who don't have strong families. I think we have to spend more time working out what those new models are, doing demonstration projects with the group of people that we're talking about, and trying to work out what's the program logic here, how do they work, how do we get good outcomes. Problem is, Australia is not good at doing that type of long-term implementation. We do pilot programs, we either adopt the whole thing and then invest all our money in them without waiting for the results. We don't do implementation well, and that's what we need to do if we're going to get these alternative models.